I am live, actually a little bit ahead today. The dog is trying very diligently to join us. He's very excited about today, probably because we got takeout and he can smell it. So I'm going to chat just a little bit while everybody's getting logged in. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat. Tuesday Town Hall works very much like a regular town hall would if you were in person. It is, most town halls will have somebody talk at the beginning, and then there will either be a microphone passed around or there's note cards that you can write your questions on, and they go up to the person or people speaking. That's very much the format we have here. So what I usually do is I usually start with some chatter to just share what's on my mind or topics that are preset. Right now, our town hall format is fairly loose and flexible. It'll get a little bit more structure as we get closer to the election, but it's summer. Today's actually my birthday, so I am not very structured today. And I have a dog again who's really trying to join us. If you do have questions, please drop them in the chat. I'm just killing another minute or two while we're letting everybody log on. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the ethics related to not taking a stand is what we'll probably start out with. And I'll start chatting in just a minute or two. If you have questions or anything to add, again, drop it in the chat. Give me just a minute. There's a showdown happening that you can't see. So our very large, very loving dog is right here. And our cat is taunting him and trying to instigate a problem, as she often does. Do you want to come say hi quick before we get going? You can come say hi. Want to come say hi? No? Want to come say hi? You can come say hi. You can come say hi. So this is Ganar. For those of you who haven't met him, he's extraordinarily friendly and loving and large. Hi. And if you come to visit, he will absolutely lick you at our door. He is a shelter dog we got during the pandemic. We don't know which breeds he is for sure. If Lick were a breed, he'd be Lick. We think he is probably a Lab Rhodesian Ridgeback mix. So he occasionally joins us, and you'll see him on my Twitter feed and Instagram. He is probably the most lovable of the whole household. Drama Cat is lovable to everybody but me. She's not my fan. So, steel toe slippers. So we have folks starting to drop messages in the chat. Gary says that he saw my tweet and maybe steel toe slippers. This morning I found a saw on my kitchen floor by virtue of whacking my foot into it while I was making hot tea. Our children are festive and adventurous as they come, and they really enjoy a range of stuff. So we had bought them some sugar cane, and they had used the saw to cut the sugar cane up and left it on the kitchen floor, as children do. So yes, and I got a hello to the pup. He would gladly take it. He meets just about everybody in our fence with lick and love, and whether or not you're interested in it. So he's a very friendly dog. So we are now past 7 o'clock. I'll start to get into the meat of it. We've had a few more people join. If you are just coming in for the first time, these are usually fairly casual events. You can tell, I don't fancy up. I'm not wearing any makeup. This is just what I wore today. I don't have polished, pre-selected answers that I've rehearsed 85 times. This is just me telling you how I feel, open question and answer. It operates very much how a regular town hall would. There's usually a speaker or speakers that start. And then as questions come in, at a regular town hall, you'd have a microphone or you'd have note cards that you pass to the front. I answer those questions as they come in, and I can kind of fit them into what I'm talking about. Just as a note, every once in a while, you find me kind of looking in the wrong place. My laptop is from 2019, and sometimes I forget and I start looking at, what looks like the audience to me. I have a separate webcam that's in a different place, so I have to remember to look at it. I'm not always great at that. So if you catch me with wandering eye, I'm either watching the dog and the cat duke it out, or I'm forgetting to look at the webcam. So I apologize if it feels like I'm not looking right at you. So today I had Bangor Daily News ask me for a quote about something that Jared Golden had said. And I'm paraphrasing here. And he was talking about how, politicians should be getting people worked up one way or the other when it comes to a lot of the raid and the espionage potential that happened down at Mar-a-Lago. And he said that it puts law enforcement safety at risk. And though I generally agree that until everything comes out, we should maybe not pass all judgment. I disagree on some of those stances. I think part of being in a leadership role is when facts are in the public sphere and they're already facts, there is no issue discussing them. And we have a lot of facts already out here. And this kind of leads to a larger discussion about ethics in government. So I do not care if your cape is blue, if your cape is red, if your cape is plaid. It does not matter to me. We should have a similar code of conduct for everybody participating in politics. I do not think that you should get to take home classified documents when you are no longer doing a job. There's times when you're doing a job where there are reasons to take home classified documents with appropriate protocols. You shouldn't get to take them with you when you leave office like they are some sort of parting gift for a game show. You may hear my children echoing down the stairs. They're supposed to be hiding in their rooms, but they're running back and forth. So you shouldn't be able to take those documents home like some sort of parting gift. And that's something that shouldn't matter which party you are. It's just unacceptable behavior. And that's also something that's already out in the public sphere. We already know that classified documents were taken inappropriately by this person. It's not a partisan thing. It's actually a records archivist that discovered this information. So it wasn't some sort of witch hunt. It's actually very boring and dry how the information came out. The FBI agents, who certainly don't lean Democrat pretty much all the time, they're just doing their job. And I think that when we do things like ramp people up that it's inappropriate when it's clearly not, that's obviously partisan for gain, inappropriate. But I also think straddling the fence and not discussing known fact ramps people up. It lets conspiracy theories take hold. It lets people get rooted in things that aren't true. And I actually think that you protect the professionals doing their job more when you say statements like, look, we know that classified documents were taken. We know they were taken to an inappropriate venue at an inappropriate time. It wasn't discovered in any sort of witch hunt. The archivists and the nature of doing their job and making sure they have everything. And archivists are basically just kind of fancy librarians. And they do a wonderful job. But a lot of people maybe don't know what they do. They create an archive or a record of what happened during people's time in office. And what they do is incredibly important. And for most people, it would be dry and boring and mundane stuff. Thank goodness there are archivists that don't find it to be dry, boring, unmundane stuff, because it's things that we need to preserve our records and make sure that we do have a functional democracy. And so I think when you try and straddle the fence and not take a stance on very boring, dry facts, there may be more afoot there, but being able to say, look, it's not ramping people up, and there isn't a conspiracy theory, and here's how we know that this is following the proper chain of command. When you're not doing that, that silence, I think, is actually an ethical breach. And that's one of sort of the main reasons I'm running against Jared Golden. He spends more time worrying about what he thinks will get him elected than doing the job well. And doing the job well sometimes means doing unpopular things or de-escalating by making bold statements. Saying something is a fact can actually be very de-escalating. And I can say, look, we just don't have to argue about this. I'm not trying to sensationalize it. This is a chain of events. This is what happened. This is all in the public sphere. None of this is classified. None of the information that we're talking about is debatable. It's just a series of facts. There may be consequences that come from this series of facts. There may be more things around this series of facts that we don't know that make it more or less exciting. But this series of facts is a known series of facts in the public sphere. And we have not had a lot of politicians doing that, which I think is really a problem. I think that we've got a lot of people that are trying to either be silent so they don't get people angry or go histrionic. And there's a gear in the middle there that might sound sensational because our environment is sort of sensational right now. There is a gear that is missing that gives us a better rooting and grounding and how things should work, because it's hard to tell when somebody who's trying to get you excited so you'll donate money is giving you facts. And we need to get back to that. That's really important. So for the folks who have just joined, the way that I generally do this is I start with sort of a topic that we're working through. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them in the chat. I'll address them as we get there. I am going to take about 3 seconds and slide out of the screen here. I'm just going to very quickly close my French doors because my children's noise is echoing quite loudly down the stairs. Hang on just a sec. Boys, I can hear you. Thank you. Please take care of your pup. And sliding back in. I apologize for that. So we've had a few more people join. If you have a question, comment, concern, something you'd like to talk about, current event you'd like to discuss, please drop it in the chat. And I am happy to answer that. Otherwise, I'm just sort of talking right now about ethics and you know, kind of making sure that we're getting back to that fact-based experience. I'm sort of astonished sometimes, you know, sometimes my sense of humor is a little bit dry. It doesn't always come across great, especially in some mediums like Twitter. I've had a lot of people tell me that in this sort of format, I'm much more grounded and centering to people because there's no tone inflection. And you can't always tell when sarcasm is afoot on places like Twitter or other social media. But I'm seldom sensational, even when joking, especially about important things. And that I think is something that we need to be more demanding of politicians. I think that we need to take people who are in public office and say, it's fine to joke. It's fine to have a personality. Absolutely fine to express yourself and talk about issues in a way that other people can understand. That's a very important skill set. If you're in any field where you're working with other people, particularly like I'm a family law attorney, definitely most of my day job, also very much a job that anybody in politics should have, or legislating. You need to be able to talk to people in a way that they can hear you. But we don't have a whole lot of fact-based posturing these days, and we need to get back to that. So that's something you should be rewarding people who are running for office with, if they are fact-based. There was another series of quotes where a couple days ago in the paper, and I put this on Twitter if you want to reference the exact article, you know, Bruce Poliquin had stated something sort of sensational, and then they sought out comments from Jared Golden and from me. And of the three of us, you know, my quote was the only one that gave multiple citations or multiple places where they could cite that what I was talking about was a verifiable fact. Do look for that. And I commend the paper for doing that, because they often don't. I think it's really important in those links in that background, just knowing that you can click through, and maybe you don't even have to read the other articles it's linking to, but you can see that it's a bona fide article, that it's substantiated, that it is something that is verifiable by neutral sources. I think that those things are really important. And we want things that are maybe more objective than neutral. You don't necessarily have to be neutral, but you should be fact-based in your reporting. So James has asked if there's any short-term benefits to the average voter from the Inflation Reduction Act other than tax deductions. I I don't know the answer. It is over 700 pages. I have not read it yet. When I last checked, there was not full CBO scoring available. I try not to have too much of opinions on bills unless I've read them and or had a chance to thoroughly review CBO scoring. I wish more people in politics did that. I will say that I have read the fact sheet that the Democrats put out. It is a marketing piece. So, you know, when you read something that is clearly a marketing piece, it means try to have a good faith assumption that it might do what it says, but be aware that it's a marketing piece. And so it may not be entirely, it might not be entirely fact-based, or it may be optimistic in its assertions, or sometimes designed to use words that let you believe what you want instead of what's true. So I believe the takeaways from that is that there certainly are supposed to be some things, although it doesn't seem to really address inflation all that much. So a lot of times you'll find the naming of a bill often doesn't have anything to do with the bill. That's one of the bills that I have been very critical about Bruce Poliquin for voting for, was the pain-capable Protection of Life Act, or something to that effect. I'm getting the words a little messed up because I haven't referenced it for a while. And it has absolutely nothing to do with what that bill does. That bill is something that prevents women from making medical decisions about children that probably are feeling pain. It was something that prevented late-term abortions, which of course everybody thinks of late-term abortions and they're like, oh my gosh, we shouldn't be ripping babies limb from limb, but that's not what late-term abortions are. Late-term abortions are almost 100% of the time making humane end-of-life decisions for either moms that can't survive pregnancy and or having a baby that everybody very much wants and loves, but is not, their situation is not compatible with life. Maybe they will have a very painful existence that's a few minutes or a few hours long. That's what late-term abortions are. And so the bill that he had voted for had nothing in there, not a single word that was for the pain or the health of the fetus. It was all about, oh, sorry, you can't do this. And so like, it was incredibly inhumane. It didn't consider the pain. All it did was make it so parents were put in a position where they could have a child that quite possibly was in a ton of pain and they couldn't do anything about it. Awful, awful naming. So I'm hoping with the Inflation Reduction Act, it actually does do some of that. It seems to offer some environmental protections. Again, I haven't seen the CBO scoring. Gary asked what CBO scoring I mentioned. So most, if not all, bills are put through a budgeting scoring to see if they actually do what they say they're supposed to do, and what the net impact is on the budget, if they increase or decrease debts, how effective they're likely to be. I'm sort of summarizing a rather large process, and it doesn't cover how effective it'll be on every single front. Doesn't always cover a lot of unintended consequences that the budget office doesn't pick up. But what they do is they score bills so they can be like, okay, well, we think that over this amount of time, it will increase the budget or decrease the budget or change the deficit this way based on these assumptions. And sometimes that scoring is very helpful. Sometimes that scoring is very misleading if they've been giving bad parameters to score it on, or if they've been giving an incomplete or poorly written bill to score. But it is I'm so sorry about that. I've got someone who is inexplicably calling me very late in the evening for a family thing. I apologize. It is someone who is, there we go. I'm not quite sure how that was ringing through. So I'm sorry if that was disruptive. I apologize. I was definitely not expecting a call. I do keep my phone close to me so that I can tell people we're going live and not live. So that scoring, you'll see that on a lot of bills, particularly the bigger bills, and on some of those bills where there is not time to read them, which is a huge problem I have with Congress, and one thing I would like to tackle when I'm there. On some of those bills, it's really the only way to kind of figure out what's going on, at least financially. It's particularly helpful if bills are a large budgetary item, or they're something, complex, like sort of the whole budget, or if it's a bunch of things mishmashed together that interchange with each other. So I hope that answered your question, Gary. But I don't know about the tax deductions. I don't know all the short-term stuff. And I haven't had a chance to review the final bill. I know they changed a bunch of stuff to get to the final bill they voted on. These bills get very lengthy at 700 pages. That is about 12 plus hours of work without bathroom breaks or coffee breaks or lunch breaks. And that's assuming you only spend 1 minute per page. A lot of these bills, some pages, if it's the page where it gives it the title or talks about the sponsors, you don't even need a minute for that. That's a 10-second glance. But some pages really need way more than 1 minute. Sometimes you have to cross-reference things. In fact, often you have to cross-reference things from other bills. Sometimes you'll be looking through a bill and like the entirety of a line is that it'll reference a section and say it changes something from and then you have to go find that other section and see what it's actually doing. So it is insufficient, the amount of time our representatives currently have to review these large pieces of legislation they're expected to vote on. Actually, I think Lauren Boebert is one of the folks who has made that one of her talking points, and I agree with her on that. I do think that anybody voting on something should have a chance to read and appreciate exactly what they're voting for. It is a big problem. It has become pervasive. I'm a huge fan of shorter bills that do less and maybe having more frequent bills, so we can have pieces that we bite away at. I think that you end up with less controversial legislation, less protest voting, where you can pick something silly and trivial and not particularly related to the bill and say, oh, well, I'm not going to vote for this because XYZ, even though it's like 0.0001% of what that bill does. Jared Golden is quite famous for that one. I think that you get better legislation generally if we just picked off little pieces at a time. That doesn't mean that you wouldn't over time accomplish the same amount of work. In fact, you probably accomplish more work because shorter bills give people fewer excuses to eke out of things. But that's not currently the way the Congress works. Kat said objective is so much more important than neutral. And I agree. I think that we do need objective reporting. But I think that, the pretense of neutral has gotten us to a place where things that are not facts are portrayed as fact so that people can appear neutral. And that's just not helpful to anybody. And I think the tagline that I see people use a lot is, when you're reporting the weather, it's not your job to say some people think it'll rain and some people think it won't. It's to look outside and see if it's raining. That's very much what we need to apply to politics, and we haven't been. For many, many, many years, it was considered not appropriate to, when somebody bold-faced lies, say that's a lie. That is not true. We need to be much more direct about it. Sometimes people are purposefully lying. Sometimes they're misstating something that they heard and haven't had a chance to research, or there's conflicting events. Sometimes it's a belief and not a fact, but then it needs to be clearly labeled as a belief. We saw this out a little bit in the Alex Jones trial. I don't know if you saw any of those clips, but the judge was like, I don't care if you believe what you are saying is true. You need to tell us the truth. Not all the time, but most of the time when somebody is being very misleading, it is not actually a sincerely held belief. There are usually ulterior motives, whether it's money or fame or, there's a range of things that can be, for example, Alex Jones is well known for just making stuff up that's a little bit nutty. There may be some truth mixed in with some of it, but obviously not all of it is truth because it's sensational and exciting and conspiracy theorists eat it up like pudding. So, but it's not journalism, and it's not the kind of thing we need to build our society on. And unfortunately, we have gotten so far away from objectivity to appear neutral that we have removed a lot of fact, and it's destabilized a lot of faith in our media. And unfortunately, the media is still participating in a way where I get upset as a consumer of news, and I hope that you do too, where a lot of times I'll see reporting and I know for a fact that it's not accurate or it's not balanced. It happens a lot to me in the race that I'm in. A lot of times they'll say, well, Golden and Poliquin are facing each other in the fall. Okay, but you completely omitted a candidate. Did you omit a candidate because you didn't fact check, or did you omit a candidate because you decided with your own editorial prowess that that candidate isn't viable by your opinion, so they're not worthy of coverage? Are there some standards you apply? There's only 3 candidates on the ballot. How hard is it to include that third candidate? And when you see little things like that, and the news is not actually giving you news, they're giving you actually editorialized news that is not objectively complete, it makes you wonder about everything that they're telling you. One of the things I discovered when I ran for office in 2018, I presumed in 2018, I am not always the most well-spoken, but at least, kind of smart and kind of well-spoken. And I can usually communicate in a way that people understand me. And it's not always perfect or well scripted, but I think that, I come across as authentically as I mean to. I am well educated, even though I don't have a high school diploma or GED. I have 4 degrees, 2 of them are graduate. So I have 3 business degrees. I have an associate's, bachelor's, and master's in business. I have a law degree. I'm a practicing attorney, traveled around a bunch. I've been a city official. I've been on boards of directors and commissions. I was president of a homeowners association. My resume is fairly long. So I was expecting that I would go into politics and I wouldn't get maybe the fanfare that all the people that were throwing millions at would get. I didn't expect that, but I expected that, at least papers and news stations would just cover me as a candidate. And if people wanted to find out more, they could, but it would kind of be, equal presentation and coverage unless people decided to purchase more coverage. And I thought that was a pretty reasonable expectation. And I had the perception that if they didn't cover people who were running for office, that it must have been that they were really eccentric, or maybe somebody to not take seriously, or maybe they had no skills or qualifications. And then when I ran, I discovered that that's not true. And it made me rethink, every single election I voted in, how many candidates have I not given a fair shot because the news writes them off and decides they don't need to cover them? And it's things like that that make us go, well, what's our news doing for us? Is it entertainment or is it news? Are they objectively presenting? I can understand whittling down candidates if there were like 35 candidates for an office. But if there's 2, 3, 4, 5, why is it inconvenient and not appropriate to cover them all? So, and when they do that to candidates, when they do that to the people who are going to make the laws, what else are they not presenting facts on? And again, taking that space where we are not objective, and again, I'm not saying people need to be neutral. Neutral is not always helpful, but where all facts that are relevant are not objectively presented. That's how conspiracy theories grow. When you get people who are candidates that are not covered and people find out about it, well, what else are they not covering? What other pieces of news are they leaving out? Some fairly critical information because it doesn't fit in the story or it doesn't fit in the spin. And it really makes us doubt our media, and we shouldn't have that. So I always encourage people, if you see stories where you know that they are objectively not covering it, push back on that media, make them issue corrections, make them include people, whether it's a candidate's missing, or it might just be facts from a regular story. Maybe you were there and saw something and know they missed something critical in their story. Sometimes it's being oblivious. Sometimes it's being lazy. Most of the time it's that a lot of folks who are in journalism think that they can make those editorial calls and make your decisions for you, and that's not okay. So, but it's not just the media that needs to do that. Our politicians need to do that. Our leadership needs to do that. And that was one of the big problems I had with Jared Golden today, is that, sitting on the fence in something that important and not stepping forward into that leadership role and saying, hey, I know not everybody's going to agree with these facts. I know that a lot of people have perceptions of what happened, but let me tell you what the facts are. These are the facts that are in the public sphere. If you're thinking it's something else happened, really check your news source. because somebody's trying to wrap you up to cause violence, and that's not appropriate. And that is much more deflating than saying, oh, I'm not going to take a stand. Let me find another fence to sit on. A few more people have joined. If you have any other questions, I usually go for at least a half an hour. We're about 29 minutes. I have all the time in the world for you, but I acknowledge that you might not have all the time in the world for me. If you have questions, comments, if you have anything that you've been wondering, please drop it in the chat. I am happy to answer it. I'll talk for another minute or so. I'm happy to talk for longer if you have questions. But if you've just joined us, because we've had a few people come and go, we've been talking about the ethics around being neutral instead of objective, and sort of the leadership role that is necessary when you take on a position of public trust, and that sometimes you have to say things that maybe aren't good for your reelection, or maybe make you take a bolder stance than you're looking for. But that's the job. The job is not to do what people want to hear. I mean, I think a lot of people don't want to hear that climate change exists. Boy, it would be more convenient if it didn't. But that doesn't make it true. You know, a lot of people want to hear that we have a truly functional, awesome social support network. And if you ever get divorced or get laid off, you are going to be taken care of by the government. It's not true. We don't have that system. And people should know that when they're making wise and educated choices about who's going to be working on those systems. So I think that there's a real temptation to either say nothing, or especially if things are unpopular, or to say maybe something that isn't true because it makes you more electable. I mean, if you look at Jared Golden's social media, it's all, you know, like, here's this cool thing that happened at a fire station and the community college. They got some more money to do this program, and those things are great. But the problem is when you focus on those things and that's not the time you're in. And honestly, the older I get, the more I realize we've never been in that time. You know, we want to think that we live in this kind of Americana timeline where everything's great, but we maybe just need a little bit of extra money for the community college, or, you know, maybe we do need to get a new fire truck every now and then. What ends up happening is there's these really important issues like human rights, like how the disabled are taken care of, like whether or not women are people, like whether or not children who get pregnant for whatever reason are somehow not mature enough to make a decision to terminate a pregnancy, but are mature enough to raise a child. Whether or not children are mature enough to get married, which they are not. You should not be able to enter into any legal institution that you cannot legally get out of until you're a few years older. That's not acceptable. And so we have these kind of festering social problems. And the more that we pretend that we're in this sort of happy valley world where, you know, we just need to subsidize cheese producers a little more and everything's going to be fabulous. But again, we've got these giant, massive, seismic problems that we're disregarding. That's not okay. We don't want leaders that pretend everything's okay except for a few little tweaks. Obviously, grab success where you can. But if you just ignore these giant festering problems, you're not qualified to be in office. Lest you think I'm letting Poliquin off the hook, you also need to live in reality and be grounded. And Poliquin has gone off into an entirely separate universe that doesn't appear to be tethered to reality at all. So neither of the gentlemen I'm running against have any business being in office. Melissa thanked me for being here, and the audience is growing with every town hall. That is true. Thank you so much for joining me. Are there any other questions before I wrap it up? I don't want anyone to feel shortchanged. I'm trying very hard to be the most accessible candidate there is for Congress. I try to do 2 digital town hall type events each week. So every Tuesday, even on my birthday, we're doing Tuesday town halls. They're at 7. They go for as long as you want to have me. Although I suppose if we ever get to the point where we're going till midnight, I'd turn into a cupcake and tell you that you had to come back a different day. Those are going to be going for the foreseeable future. The only thing that might get rid of one of those is if there is a debate. You know, that might be a double booking. The debate, if it's televised, would be a higher priority. Most Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. Eastern time. I also do Breakfast with Tiffany. As we get closer to election, right now they look very similar. As we get closer to election, the town halls are going to become a little bit more structured. The Breakfast with Tiffany is going to always stay kind of a casual Q&A. There are going to be some weeks where I'm not able to do the Breakfast with Tiffany. I'm still finalizing my event schedule for this weekend. I may be required to be further away than I can get if I do an 8 a.m. meeting. So that is not going to be a possibility probably. In the event that I get over 1,000 followers on this YouTube channel, I can try and do some of the Breakfast with Tiffany's from events, or I can get to events early and kind of show you around because I can broadcast from my phone then. So definitely tell people to follow the station. Make sure you're doing Maine raisings. If you want to throw money at something, go treat yourself this month. It's self-care summer. Get yourself some massage oils. Get yourself some custom-made artisanal slippers. Get yourself sleep masks. There's all sorts of things that are cool and wonderful, made in Maine. Tell them that I sent you. Make sure you leave the note. The note is the magic, telling the people to go look me up, say some positive things about the campaign. Very, very, very important. Share it on social media. If you tag me, it's going to get a lot more exposure. If you aren't the shopping sort, then please, if you're wanting to throw money at problems, we're funding teacher projects. I've got some posted. Teachers are hurting this year. They have some real budget issues. There are some great projects in the district. Everyone that I put up is going to be in the district. It's a little hard. I think I counted up. We might have 391 municipalities in the newly redistricted 2nd Congressional District, which is a lot of different places. So I've started telling people, just go for Maine, aim for rural. You're probably going to get the district. And if money's not your thing, try and get some followers, be a 5-minute volunteer, talk up the campaign a little bit. If you see people talking about independence or being frustrated with 2 parties or ranked choice voting, those are perfect places to say, hey, check out this campaign. Might be your cup of tea. Don't have a whole lot of other questions. Thank you for the happy birthdays. It's very nice. And I will see you maybe Saturday, but definitely next Tuesday. You can also find me online. I'm easiest to find Twitter. Twitter, it's at Tiffany Bond. And you can email me through the campaign web page, which is bond4.me. If you start getting things in the mail, you may periodically get something in the mail for me. I did go down this year and get a voter list. So if you get a handwritten card, that is from me personally. If you get a postcard, it's probably from a volunteer. So I've already had a couple people ask me, oh my gosh, I got this handwritten card. Who's it from? Well, if it's a handwritten card, it's most likely directly from me. So I'm going to send out as many of those as I can. If you'd like to volunteer to send a few postcards, and that's the kind of contribution that you want to make, please send me a message or send me an email. I want you all to have a lovely Tuesday night. Oh my gosh, I need some caffeine. And I will see you soon. Enjoy the middle of August. I hope that you all are having a great summer.